Welcome to Kendra's Artistic Crochet Designs. And today I'm gonna tell you about a recent order that I got. One of my friends wanted me to make them a blanket in the Ohio State colors. So um, I the football that we did last month, I decided to do. And this video is already up, but you just change colors. I did a gray background and I did a red background, and I figured that I could do 10 of the red background and 10 of the gray background, and then I have come up with a brand new granny square to go with these, and this is called the honeycomb granny square. Our Tunisian, I'm going to call it the Tunisian honeycomb granny square. I just love it. And I don't know, you could see that. And what I did is I put two different colors together. And because this granny square is done in a round, um, I started with one color, and then I used another color to take off the stitches so that you could see the honeycomb. You could see the honeycomb right here, but in the background you see that other color. Isn't that the coolest thing? I just fell in love with this, and I was just playing around with it and thought, man, I can make a perfect granny square with this. So I am going to show you how to do this granny square, and I figured I would do 10 of those. Now you can change colors. I started this granny square with the red front and the black background, and then went into white, but I'm going to start the next granny square with the gray background and the white in the front. So, and you could do any variety of different combinations with the colors, and I thought it would really give the blanket um, a really neat appeal to it. Okay, well, first of all, I'm also using, this is one of those double-sided small hooks that I love to use when I do granny squares, because the hook isn't very big, and there's a hook on each side. Now this side is an 8mm and this side is 7mm, but we are going to start with the 8mm, and we're going to make a magic circle to start with. And I am going to chain one, and then I'm going to put 10 or 16 single crochets in this magic circle. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, then I'm going to pull this shut, pull that middle shut, and there we go. Now, what we're going to do now is we're just going to pick up stitches and do our base stitching like we would do a granny square. We're going to start with a corner. So I'm going to go into the back loop of this and pick up a stitch. And then I'm going to go into the first and second loop and pick up a stitch. Okay, so I have 3 on this. This is my corner. Okay, so this middle one right here is the corner. And it is easier when you're doing these to put stitch markers on the corner. So I am going to use that as a yellow stitch marker there. And now I'm going to pick up a stitch from each of the next 3 stitches. So that'll be the side, one of the sides. So there is 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's a side of the granny square. Okay, now in the next stitch we're got to make another corner. So we're going to go to the back loop and pick up a stitch, and then I'm going to go to the front loop only and pick up another stitch. And I kind of figured this out on my own, how we could do this, all these in one stitch. And I think you guys seen me do this before, or when we're doing our calendar blanket, I have done this in the corners. Yes. Now if I can get that to come out, this is the only way this works in Tunisian, as you need to pick up from different sides of that stitch. Come on, get in there. All right, there it is. And now I'm going to go through for my third stitch of the corner. This is the middle stitch, and for my third stitch I'm going to go through both loops and that same stitch and pick up another stitch, so I can get 3 loops out of that one stitch. And I need another stitch marker, and to mark my corner again. All right, so now we're going to pick up the next 3 stitches again. So there's 1, 2, 3. That is my second side of my granny square. Now I have 2 sides and 2 corners done, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in, so we're doing this way, right? So now we're going to turn our work and bring everything down to this number 7 hook. So I am on the other side of my hook now, and what I'm going to do is I'm bringing this gray and I'm going to go through 1, and then I'm going to go through 2, and then go through 2, 2, 2, just keep going through 2 until I get down to 2 loops on my hook. All right, now I'm going to turn, but we're going to make sure that we turn the opposite way that we turned before, because we don't want our yarns to get tangled up. All right, so now that I have the 3 sides, because we've got a corner to do next, right? So we're back to doing a corner. Back loop, front loop, and then both loops. And then we're going to need a stitch marker. And all right, to do that middle one, I'm going to put this stitch marker in the middle one, because that is our actual corner. All right, we got that in there. Now we need to do 3 more stitches to create another side. So we're going to pick up loops from the next 3 stitches. There's 2 and 3. Now we're ready to do another corner, and this is our last corner. So we're going to go through the back loop of that stitch and then the front loop of that stitch. And then we're going to go through both loops. And then we need another stitch marker. Now I know that these stitch markers are all different colors, but the yellow one, I'm going to know that's where I started from. That was my first corner. Alright, so now we need to pick up loops from the next 3 stitches to create the last side. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And that should be your last 3, actually. And now we can turn this again and get rid of these stitches because row 1 is done, and this is actually our base. We're going through 2. From here on out, you'll always go through 2 now. It's just that very first stitch that you will only go through 1. But from here on out, you'll always go through 2. And I always go through 2 until there's 2 loops on my hook. There we go. Like that. Now, make sure you go back the same opposite way. So if you keep turning and turning it, these 2 yarns are going to tangle up together. Alright, so this is what row 1 looks like. And this is so cool. Now, we are going to start, and at the beginning of this month, I taught you how to do the honeycomb stitch. And so we're going to start the honeycomb at this point because we have our base row done. All right. So you're trying to think of how I want to do this. I want to end the honeycomb stitch with the, okay, this is the last stitch of this side, and we're going to end it. We're going to make this stitch right here a purl. Okay? Now, we're at the corner, and we're going to go in between the stitches right here as a full stitch, because we've learned full stitches. Okay, you're going to do a full stitch there, and then I'm just going to take this off, and in the corner only, we're going back, we're going to go through as a knit stitch. Okay, so the corner is a knit stitch. So you're actually doing, to do this pattern, you're actually going to be doing 4 different stitches. Okay, so and then on the other side, in between the stitches again, we need another full stitch. And there is our corner formed. You need 3 stitches to form this corner. All right, now we're going to start out with a purl. This is going across the side. And then we're going to do a simple stitch in the next stitch. Then you're going to do a purl in the next stitch, a simple in the next stitch, and you will end up with a purl. Okay, so each side, you will always, the sides will always go this way every row. You'll start out with a purl, you'll end up with a purl. Every time, every row. Okay, it works out that way. It just does. All right, now we're back at this corner again, and we need to put a full stitch in between the stitches. We're putting a full stitch in, and then I'm going to do a knit stitch for the corner right in that stitch, and mark that stitch as the corner again. All right, and then we're going to do a full stitch on the other side of that stitch. Okay, and now we're back doing the side again. So now we're going to purl, simple, purl, simple, and purl. Okay, now we have done 2 sides and 2 corners, and we're going to go back through. We're going to turn this around and take some stitches off. All right, so we're going to go through 2, go through 2, keep going through 2 until we've got 2 loops on our hook, and we can turn it back around and continue around our square. I love doing Tunisian granny squares. And you know, as a granny square lover, of all sorts of granny squares I have ever done, I don't know, I just love this. All right, now we're going to turn this back around, and we're going to continue, and we're at a corner now, so we need to put a full stitch on this side of the corner. Then we need to do the knit stitch in the corner like we've been doing, and then another full stitch, and then I'm going to mark my new corner. It's just easier. I love these, especially doing Tunisian granny squares. You almost got to mark those corners because you can't really see them that much. All right, so now again we're going to start with the side, and we need to start with a purl. Okay, simple, purl, simple, and then we end up with a purl before we hit this corner right here. All right, then again we need a full stitch, a knit stitch, and a full stitch to make that corner. And the full stitches actually adds the, when we're doing these 2 stitches, it adds to our sides to make our granny square bigger. All right, so we're on the last side, and we need a purl, a simple, a purl, and a simple. And remember, we started this row with the purl, so it's going to end up that the beginning. Let's actually start. What color should we do? Not that it matters. Let's do this green. Okay, so this green marker is going to mark our first stitch of every row. That way we know when to stop and where we're at in our row. So not only do I have my corners marked, but I also have that very first stitch marked as well. All right, so let's turn this around and get rid of these stitches. I'm like going through 2, 2, 2, 2, until we get down to 2 loops on our hook. I mean, when you get the sense of doing these granny squares, this really isn't that hard. And then all you got to do is just add these stitches in, and you can make some really neat granny squares just by doing these different stitches. And I think I did at the beginning of the year, or toward the beginning of the year, we did do a granny square. using the simple stitch, knit stitch, and the purl stitch, and we put all three of those in one granny square. So you can look that up. I have that granny square in there. And okay, so that was row 2 finished. Okay, and you can already see these um, honeycomb pattern coming out. Let's do another row together. Okay, so I told you that you will always start with a purl and end with a purl. And because this first stitch is on this side of our corner, we know that this was a purl, this is going to be a simple. Okay? And then my next stitch will be a purl. But I am going to move this marker up here because that is actually my first stitch of the row. If I can get the stitch marker to cooperate with me. All right, then my next stitch is a purl, and that is the last stitch of this side. So I just did the last 2 stitches of this side right here. All right, so now we're at a corner, and the corner, as always, is a full stitch, and then we need the corner as a knit stitch, and then a full stitch on the other side, as like so. All right, and then we're at a full side again. Now we are going to start out with the purl, and then we're going to do a simple, and you can see that it works out too, because this was a purl, this will be a simple, and this is a simple, so we know this would be a purl in the next one. And then we got a simple, purl, simple, purl. But when we do these granny squares, it always ends up, if you start out with a purl on the sides, you will always end up with a purl every row. And that's so cool the way that works out. And that's because of the math. So you math lovers get a big kick out of that. All right, so we're at a corner now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a simple, and then I'm going to knit that corner, and not a simple, I'm sorry, that was a full stitch. I meant a full, a knit, a full. That's what makes up our corners, and you do that in every corner, through and throughout. Okay, so this whole thing is going to be this way. Once you get used to the pattern, then it's easy. Then we're going to do our purl, simple, purl, simple, purl, simple, and purl. Okay, so now my hook is getting kind of full, and so I'm just going to turn this around and take off some of these. I'm just going to take them off until I have 2 left, and then I can start over again. All right, we're back in business again. Now we can fill it up again. So now we're back at the corner again, and so we got a full stitch and then a knit stitch and a full stitch, and then we're going to put that stitch marker back in the middle of those stitches, and we are set. That corner is there. Now again, we're at the side, and we're going to start out with a purl and a simple, a purl, a simple, a purl, a simple, and a purl. And we are back at a corner again. So now let's do our corner, which consists of a full, a knit, and a full. All right, and now we're going to finish off this last side. Now remember, we did the first two stitches. As you can see, I have my green one here. That was the beginning of the row. So I'm going to start out with a purl as usual, and then we're going to do a simple, a purl, a simple, and a purl. And of course this first stitch was a simple. So then we can take those off because that's the end of our row, and we'll go ahead and finish this off and take them off, take this off our hook so we can finish up our third round of the granny square. And now you can really see those stitches coming, I meant the pattern really coming out right now. You can really see that pattern now. And we've got our honeycomb effect in here. You really see that. Okay, so yeah, we've done 3. We're going to do 2 more. So do 2 more of this, and then we'll be back, and I'll show you how we're going to change colors. Okay, so I have, this is, yeah, 5 rows. Well, it's actually 6 rows because we've got that row of single crochets in the middle. So it's actually about 6 rows of rounds, actually not rows, rounds. Okay, so what I did in changing these colors is I tied the magic knot. I cut these 2 off after I put my stitch marker in these 2 stitches. Then I cut them off, and then I took a magic knot and I tied on the black to the gray and the red to the white. All right, and now I'm going to and then you're just going to continue with this first stitch should be a purl, and then I'm going to mark that as my first stitch. Get in there. All right, and then Then we're just going to continue doing the same pattern. Where there's a purl, it should be a simple, and where there's a simple, it should be a purl. And the corners are done the exactly same way. And what you're going to do is what I did was I just continue around with the different colors, 5 rows, and then I did 2 rows. I changed colors again, only this time I put the black on the outside and the red on the inside. But you could do whatever you want. If you want to finish this off with 7 rows, since we did 6 rows here, you could do that. I went ahead and I just switched colors just to make it look cool. So I'm going to finish off my granny square, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to do this border. And I will see you then. Okay, so we've got the square done. I put an extra row. I put in 3 rows at the top here instead of 2. And I think it just makes it a little bit bigger. But, you know, you can decide what size you like your square. Okay, so we're going to do the border. And we're not going to be needing these. So what we're going to do is we're going to do like half double crochets, but we're just going to pick up the stitch like it is a simple stitch. So just pick up the but we're going to do half double crochet. So pick up the stitch, do a half double crochet. Alright, so we're just going to half double crochet all the way around. Let's go into the corner. I could show you how to do the corner. Alright, so now we're at the corner, and we could take out so how we're going to do the corner is we need to put 3 stitches in the corner, but we're going to go through it like a knit stitch. So we're just going to go right through and 3 times on that same stitch, and just put 3 half double crochets in there. And then you're just going to continue picking up like a simple stitch the rest of these. You just go all the way around it like that. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way around my square, and I will be back for row 2 of this border, round 2. Okay, so row 2 of this border is in the third okay, so that would be, we've got front loop, second loop, that back loop, and then third loop, which is right here. We're going to half double crochet in the third loops. Which will leave the first and the second. It'll bring it forward, so it'll make this little design. And then when you get to that corner, in the third loop of that corner, you're going to put 3 half double crochets in there. And then you're just going to continue around, just putting a half double crochet in every third loop all the way around. Alright, I'm going to finish my round 2, and I will be back for round 3 next. Okay, so for the last row of this border, and it's row 3, we're going to single crochet in those third loops instead of half double. We're just going to single crochet. And then when you get to the corners, you will put 3 single crochet in the third loop of the corner. Like that. And go all the way around like it, and it'll look like this. And this one's a little bit different, but the square will look like that. Anyway, so that is the end of our honeycomb, Tunisian honeycomb granny square. I hope you guys had a lot of fun making the square with me. I want to thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and bye-bye now.